This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. And the birthday boy for today, September the 8th, is you can kind of call him a diminutive goalie, even though he was 5'8". He was a goalie who played for Montreal, LA, Detroit, and Boston in an angelic career spanning 1967 to 1982. He was a star for LA, bringing in their first main goaltender in years and helping the Kings do decently, but not get to a Stanley Cup final. But he was still Stanley Cup caliber. And he had a fantastic international tournament in 1976 at the Canada Cup, which I will talk about. But this guy is now 79 years old. His name, Rogie Vachon. Rogie was born in Palmareau, Quebec, and played junior, and then you got signed to a contract by the Montreal Canadiens. Now, this was before the draft, in a sense. So he didn't participate in the 1963 draft in the NHL, which was the first ever draft. But yeah, Montreal decided to do a deal. After all, he is Quebecois. So anyway, he was the backup goalie to Gump Worsley for the 66-67 season. The Habs got to the Stanley Cup Finals. The strange thing was that Vachon practically played a lot of the playoff games instead of Gump Worsley, which was weird because Gump Worsley was a decent goalie, and helped Montreal get to the Stanley Cup Finals against Toronto. Vachon would be, the backup for the Habs and would get a spot on the Habs roster and all that. However, Punch and Black, who was coach of the Leafs, practically called Vachon a junior B goalie to rattle him to the Stanley Cup Finals because, rookie Vachon was an unknown. And Imlach, I think, was trying to make sure that Toronto beat Montreal. And they did. Punch Imlach did his job. Vachon was decent, although he would give up the double overtime goal to Bob Pulford in Game 3 of the 1967 Stanley Cup Finals. So Vachon was the goalie of record, I think, when they in the last ever Leafs Stanley Cup Finals win, much less a Stanley Cup win and all that. Vachon would play more games in 1968, winning 23 out of 39, which was pretty good. He and Gump Worsley were shared the Vezina. At the time, the Vezina Trophy for best goalie was actually awarded to the team with the fewest goals against and all that. And you had to be in 25 games to get at least a share of the Vezina and prize money. It was 1981 before the Vezina became for the best goalie and the Jennings Trophy was for goals against. Regardless of that, Montreal won the Stanley Cup in 1968 and also 1969. Vachon would be named the starting goalie for the Habs during the 1969-70 season as Gump Worsley was traded to Minnesota because he was having mental health issues and quit on the Habs and then decided to go back to hockey once the Habs assured him of a trade, and he got traded to Minnesota. So Vachon played a few years. In 1970, he was the starting goalie, and Montreal missed the playoffs for the first time in 24 years, which was shocking because Montreal always made the playoffs. I mean, you had a decent shot to make the playoffs, 4 out of 6 in the original 6 era. But in 1970, you had what was it? A 8 out of 12 chance. You had a 67% chance because 4 out of 6 in each division would move to the playoffs. So anyway, Gump Worsley aside, Vachon was the goalie, and the worst part was Habs that year missing the Stanley Cup playoffs actually didn't miss the playoffs again until 1995. Anyway, Vachon was practically the starting goalie. Unfortunately, an interloper by the name of Ken Dryden came along. He was 6-0 in the regular season in 1971 and took Vachon's job away from him to start the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Bruins. Imagine if Rogie Vachon had been in net for that 71 series against the Bruins. I think the Bruins would have crushed the Habs and won the Stanley Cup because they were powerful. They had 6 20-goal scorers or something like that. They had the goal scoring record. So anyway, Vachon knew the writing was on the wall and requested a trade out of Montreal, knowing Candrena was going to be the star goalie forever for the Habitants. And Montreal agreed. They traded him to Los Angeles for Dennis DeJordy, a goalie, Dale Horgenson, Noel Price, and Doug Robinson. Practically everyone was not there. I don't know how DeJordy did in Montreal. I know that he was the backup for Chicago for a while. I don't know how many games he played as a Habitant, if any. Well, his page says that he played 7 games for the Habs in 72, going 3-2-1, and then went to Detroit. All right, I'll take that. The other 3 were just terrible people. Well, they didn't really have the careers. So Vachon would have a renaissance as a goalie, being the main guy for Los Angeles. We're looking for a star goalie after Terry Sachek left after the first season of the Kings' history. So anyway, Vachon was huge. He was runner-up for the Vezina in 1975 and got to the second All-Star team, 75 and 77. So that meant he was like the second best goalie around, which was pretty good. He almost got credit for scoring a goal against the Islanders because the Islanders scored on themselves during delayed penalty. But after video review, it was credited to Vic Vanaski because Vanaski was the last Kings player to touch the puck before it went into the net. Vachon would set many LA Kings records that would be shattered by Jonathan Quick, but still, anyway. The Kings would retire his number first, number 30. So February 1985, Vachon's number 30 was retired by the Kings. And that was the first number the Kings retired. Not Marcel Dionne's number, not Dave Taylor, not even Gretzky. It was Rogie Vachon. So in 1976, during the offseason, the Canada Cup happened. It was, of course, best on best international competition, similar to the 72 Summit Series, but adding 4 more countries. It was going to be the best of 6 countries. Canada, the Soviets, the Czechoslovakia at the time, well, that's what they were known at the time, US, Sweden, and Finland. Sweden was starting to get people into the NHL by Salming and Hammarström. Finland had Juha winning at one time, but he was old and declining. The Americans, not a lot of Americans were in the NHL in 1976. The Soviets, obviously, nobody could come to the NHL because of them being behind the Iron Curtain, as well as Czechoslovakia. And Canada, having their great players and all that. So Vachon was named top goalie for the Canada Cup. He was going to be Canada's number 1 with Jared Cheevers and Chico Resch backing him up. He played in every game of the tournament, putting up 6 wins and a loss, 2 shutouts, and a 1-3-9 goals against. He was named team MVP. Although everyone named Bobby Orr the tournament MVP, which was kind of wrong in a sense. But again, Orr was playing with crappy knees and somehow did a good tournament. His last big hurrah before his career tumbled. Thanks to Alan Eagleson and terrible knees that made him play 10 games for the Chicago Blackhawks, of all things. So yeah, Chico wasn't there. But yeah, Rogie Vachon was just the star goalie for Canada and did well against every team. So after 1978, he was a restricted free agent and he left for Detroit, which was weird because Detroit, lost Marcel Dionne to LA because of Dionne being lazy. So Vachon kind of went the other way. He was given a 5-year deal worth $1.9 million, not per year, but total. Unfortunately, though, he would struggle and all that. And, Detroit wasn't really the best goalie team around, but yeah, Vachon struggled and all that. There was a massive distraction because he was a restricted free agent. The Red Wings had to give compensation to the Kings. And the arbitrator ruled that Dale McCourt, who the Red Wings picked number 1 overall in 1977, was the guy that would go to LA. McCourt refused to report to LA. I don't know what happened, if that was what happened. A legal battle and all that. McCourt would remain playing for the Red Wings during the lawsuit and all that. The matter was resolved and all that and brought a lot of weirdness. Regardless of that, Vachon just struggled and all that. He was not the best guy around. After 2 disappointing seasons in Detroit, the Red Wings were so pissed off they decided to get rid of him and traded him to Boston for another goalie, Gilles Gilbert, which was shocking because Boston, had Gilbert and Cheevers as a great goalie duo, and Gilbert probably would have been the new number one with Cheevers retiring, but he wasn't. Vachon would be the mentor to Marco Barron and Jim Craig. You remember Jim Craig, the guy who was the American goalie for America on Ice? Yep. Vachon would play 53 games and would be a little bit more marginal. Unfortunately, though, Vachon would give up 20 goals in a 3-game series against the Minnesota North Stars. And then by 82, the second season, he was not the starter anymore. It was Marco Barron and all that. Vachon was the backup, but only played 1 game in the 82 playoffs in relief of Mike Moffat, who the Bruins decided to make their goalie for the playoffs against Quebec, which bit them in the butt. Vachon would retire 6 days later. Anyway, he was a premier one-on-one goalie. He never allowed to go on penalty shot his entire career. Yeah, one-on-one, when you want to face Vachon, you better not. Vachon would be the GM of the Kings from 1984 to 1992. And of course, that meant he was the GM when Gretzky was traded to from Edmonton to LA. He was interim head coach of the Kings on 3 separate occasions and was inducted to the Hockey Hall of Fame in November 2016. Vachon would have 7 siblings, grow up on a dairy farm. He married his wife and had 3 children, Nicolas Vachon, who played hockey, Jade, and Marie Jouet. Unfortunately, his wife, Nicole Ledger, would die of brain cancer after 44 years of marriage in 2016. So Vachon won 3 Stanley Cups with the Habs. Yes, in 71, he was credited with a Stanley Cup ring, which was amazing. Canada Cup champion in 76, Vezina Trophy in 1968, 3 All-Star games, his number retired by the Kings, and he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He only has 1 LA Kings record, and that's most career ties, which will not be shattered because you can't play to ties anywhere. So he played 795 NHL games, 355 wins. That's good. 51 shutouts at 299 goals against average. 23 and 23 in the playoffs. Having a few decent runs for the Kings, but not really the super run. And all that. So he did what he could. And, he was an interim coach for three seasons and all that, going 4-3-3. So yeah, Rogie Vachon was just pretty darn good, and he helped Canada win a Canada Cup. So why not do it? Video about him. Anyhow, I'm Jeff. I'm gonna do.